Sometimes you need a card that feels clean, simple, and lets one beautiful detail do all of the work. That's exactly what I want for today's card. With Mother's Day coming up, I thought it would be the perfect time to pull out this Etched Layered Daisy Stem and really let it shine against an all-white background. I'll be using Distress Oxide sprays and Distress inks to add color and dimension to the flower, and then we'll bring it all together into a design that works just as well for any occasion. Let's get started. Hey everyone, it's Lean from ColoradoLean.com. Welcome back to the craft room. To create our flowers today, I'm going to be using a scrap piece of Strathmore Bristol Velum surface paper. And I have that right here. I'm just going to cut this in half. Let's start with our flower color. And I'm going to be using Wild Honey Distress Oxide spray. And while we're here, I'm going to be using Mowed Lawn for my leaf and stem. Now, I am by no means an expert in creating backgrounds. I will link to a video that I did last year when I first got my oxide sprays. I think what I'm going to do is spray some of the wild honey onto my mat, and then I will add some water to it. And then I'm just going to drag my card through. Now I do have my Wagner heat tool, and I'm going to go off camera and dry this. Okay, it is mostly dry, and I'm just going to pounce in a little bit of colored dots here and dry this. I think that's going to make some beautiful flowers. So I'm going to set this one aside to completely dry. All right, now I'm going to do the same for Mowed Lawn. I'm going to spray some onto my craft mat and then add some water. And then I will drag my panel through. All right, I'm going to come back in and get some dots of color just for a little bit of texture. All right, I think I like this one as well. Get that in focus for you. I think I did a pretty good job on that one. Now, if you are really interested in incredibly beautiful inked backgrounds like this, I highly recommend checking out Tiffany Solero's YouTube channel. I will definitely link her down in the description for you. But you know what? I think this turned out better than the first time I tried making backgrounds. So that's good, considering I haven't used them since that last video. Okay, I'm going to set these panels aside to dry. I'm going to get all the ink cleaned up from my workstation, and then we will move on to the next part. All right, my panels are nice and dry now. So I'm going to take my Simon Says stamp, Etched Layered Daisy Stem dies and place them onto my paper. I have some Best Ever craft tape to hold these in place. Now I'm just trying to find a spot where I think would look really nice. I am going to be doing my die cutting off camera. However, I wanted to show you something that I learned with this heavier paper. So on my Sizzix die cut machine, I have my base plate and I have shims 1 and 2. Then I will be using my scrapbook.com magic mat. I have my paper and my dies. And then I have a scrap piece of printer paper, and I'm going to place that over the top. And then I will put my cutting pad on. Now, I found this works a lot better than putting the copy paper on top. I don't know why, but it worked really well when I did it the other day. So that's what I'm going to do. So let me run these through and then I will get my stem ran through and I'll be right back with you. And there we go, beautifully die cut pieces. So let's enhance these just a little bit. I'm going to move the flowers off to the side and work with my stem and leaf first. I'm going to start off with some crushed olive. So I have a variety of brushes small brushes that I'm going to use today. These two are, these two brushes are from Picket Fence Studio. The Best Ever blending brush or something like that. I'll go ahead and put that name up there. And this one is just an eyeshadow brush from Walmart. And I am just going to brush this all over my stem and leaves. Okay, and that brightened the color up just a little bit. And now I'm going to bring in Rustic Wilderness. And I'm going to be very careful with this color. And I'm just going to come in at the base of the leaves. And just at a few spots along the stem. And there we go. All right, let's move on to our flower. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of mustard seed to brighten up the entire palette. So here's an example of before and after. So that mustard seed really brought out the yellow in the Wild Honey Distress Oxide. Now I'm going to come in with some Rusty Hinge. And I want to be extra careful with this one. So I'm just going to go around the sides of the petals. Now that was a very subtle addition to it, but I really like how it looks. And now I'm going to bring in my absolute favorite distress color, Vintage Photo. And with this color, I am just going to go in the center of the flower. So we're basically going to make this a sunflower. And even though we don't necessarily need to color the center of the back layer, I'm going to do that anyway, so that when I put my flower together, if I don't get it lined up completely correct, then that's okay, because the back layer is about the same color. And there are our finished flowers. Okay, once again, I am going to get this cleaned up. I'm going to get all of the Distress ink off of my desk, off of my hands, and away from the desk. So when I bring in my white paper, it will stay white. I have a 110-pound Recollections cardstock in white for my card base. As always, it is 8.5 inches long, 5.5 inches tall, and it is scored down the middle at 4.25. Now, the plan that I have for today is to have my white card base, the sentiment down here in the corner, and then have a textured panel that the flower is going to sit on. My first thought for this was to use the Cuttlebug embossing folder from the Orient Weave collection. And it's pretty, but I don't know, I think it's a little bit too much for what I have in mind. So I went digging through my stash, and sometime last year I bought a 12 by 12 pack of white paper, and that's all I looked at. It wasn't until I got home that I realized it was a linen texture cardstock, not what I needed. But I think it's going to be perfect for today. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this in focus. It is a very, very light linen texture. It's definitely easier to see the texture in person than it is on camera. So I will definitely get a close-up photo of this for you. So what I want to do with this piece is cut it down a little bit. Now this piece is already 2 inches wide. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not, but it is completely lined up on this side, and it is angled in on this side. And that is not going to work for me. So I am going to bring in my Tim Holtz Rotary Media paper trimmer, and I'm going to cut another strip. Of course, I want to square up this side. Yeah, I think you can see that's where the cut was off. So I'm going to turn this over, move everything out of my way. And then line this up at 2 inches. So let's bring in our 8.5 inch guillotine trimmer. And I need to cut this to 5.5 inches tall. Before we glue that down, I do want to stamp my sentiment. So I will bring in my Mini Misty, line up the card in the lower left-hand corner, as well as my card mat approximately where I want it. For my sentiment today, I'm going to be using the well-loved Waffle Flower Tulip stamp set, and I'm going to be using the Happy Mother's Day stamp. I will be stamping this with Gina K Designs Amalgam ink in Obsidian Black. Now, because this linen cardstock isn't what I wanted, I don't know how it will react to glue. There are some thin cardstocks that will definitely show where you put your glue, and I don't want that for this card. So I am going to attach this with some 1/4-inch score tape. Now I did already put my Misty away, but I think I'm going to bring it back in to help me line this up. So I will place my card base in and hold it down with the magnet. Now, to give me a little bit of wiggle room, I am going to also add some Barely Art Precision Glue just over the tape. And I'm going to give myself, maybe about 1/4 of an inch in from the edge of the card. I know I'm not going to be able to get this focused, but I can definitely see where the tape line is on here. So this is really, really thin cardstock. Now I know we talked about this the last time I used this flower die, but to line them up, each layer has 5 petals. So the top layer is easy to tell what the top is from the bottom because of the position of the little embossed images in the die. So knowing that, we have 1 petal that is to the top. So to line it up with our bottom layer, we need 1 petal towards the bottom. And then that way they will fit together nicely. And as always, using reverse tweezers is definitely going to be the best way to do this. And then we just kind of nudge it around until we like how it looks. Now I could very easily glue the stem to the back of the flower, but I think I'm going to build it all on my card base. So I'm going to add a little bit of glue to my stem and my leaves. I do want to be careful that I don't get too much glue on here, but we need enough that it will stick down. And I think I'm going to glue my flower on just like that. Now, when I put the glue on, I'm just putting glue on the back layer. And there is my finished card. I love how this card turned out. The flower really pops against the all-white background, and the sentiment is subtle enough that it doesn't take away from that clean and simple look. Now, I do wish that the linen texture on this strip was a bit more pronounced. It is a slightly different shade of white than the card base, but without that added texture, it feels like it's missing just a little something. Now, I did mention earlier that this design works for just about any occasion. So, of course, I made a few extra examples to show how easy it is to switch things up. For this first one, I went with a soft purple flower. I used Wilted Violet Distress Oxide spray as the base, then went over the whole flower with worn lipstick to soften it just a bit. Around the edges, I added seedless preserves for a little more depth. For the center of the flower, I used my favorite vintage photo. The stems and leaves started with peeled paint Distress Oxide spray, and then I blended crushed olive over the top. I finished it off with a little frayed burlap for the shadows. For the sentiment, I used the Cosmo set from Technique Tuesday, and this strip was embossed with the Orient Weave embossing folder from Cuttlebug. For this card, I went more into the pink tones and started with picked raspberry Distress Oxide spray and then blended with worn lipstick over the entire flower. Around the edges, I added aged mahogany to deepen that color. The center of the flower is also aged mahogany with just a tiny bit of black soot right in the middle. For the stems and leaves, I used Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide spray and then blended peel paint over everything. I added a touch of Rustic Wilderness for the shadows. The sentiment is from the Classic Beauty stamp set by Altenew. And on the strip, I added some heat embossing using the Ton Stamp's Diagonal Stripes background stamp with Ranger clear embossing powder. And for my last card, I went with the coral color. I used Abandoned Coral Distress Oxide spray as the base, then blended mustard seed over the entire flower to warm it up. Around the edges, I added warm lipstick. For the flower center, I used Vintage Photo with a little ground espresso right in the middle. The stem and leaves were done with peeled paint Distress Oxide spray. Then I blended Mowed Lawn over the top and added frayed burlap for the shadows. For this strip, I actually used a piece of shimmer gold cardstock from my scrap pile, which adds a nice little touch of shine. And my sentiment is from the Crafter's Square The Little Things stamp set. Seeing them all together like this, it's fun how just changing the color of the flower can give the card a completely different feel. Now I'd love to know, which flower color do you like best? I actually ran a little poll in our family group chat last night, and this purple flower won by a landslide. Thank you so much for spending some creative time with me today. If you enjoyed this project, I'd love it if you gave the video a thumbs up. And if you're new here, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next tutorial. I'll see you soon.